The Allen Line Company appreciates all of the dedicated carriers it takes to move loads across the U.S. Stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
The regulatory agencies in the federal government and many people in highly regulated industries like trucking are still buzzing about what's been called the Chevron decision made recently by the U.S. Supreme Court. And in fact, it's something that could really change how the whole regulatory process works going forward and how regulations could impact you in the future. I'll get the details from OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Problems with bad brokers have been around for many, many years in the trucking industry, and one of the big ones is when a broker simply fails to pay a trucker for hauling a load, and that is when you will likely have to file against a broker's bond. I'll get a little how-to help from Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. And finally, a new law in Louisiana addresses truckers' liability when it comes to optional equipment on their truck. Meanwhile, New York is putting some new requirements on the GPS navigation tools that many truckers use. Scott Thompson will get the latest from our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. For the second time in about 2 weeks, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has denied a petition related to rear impact guards. Nearly 2 years ago, 4 people who lost children in underride crashes asked the agency to strengthen existing rear underride guard requirements in the U.S. The request came just about a month after NHTSA updated the standards to their current level, which provides sufficient strength and energy absorption to protect occupants of compact and subcompact passenger cars that hit the rear of trailers at 35 miles an hour. The 4 individuals who filed the petition said the rule did not go far enough, but NHTSA disagreed in their denial, saying the petition didn't provide new or different information that would warrant initiation of a rulemaking at this time. It's the same reason the agency gave earlier this month when denying a nearly identical petition that was filed by several safety groups around the same time. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has denied an exemption request from a Wyoming-based company that transports latex-embedded cement. Late last year, Ryman Corp asked the agency for a pass that would allow its drivers the same hours of service exemption that is granted to those who operate at service oil wells. The exemption would have allowed the company's drivers to record waiting time at construction sites as off-duty. In its denial, FMCSA said the company did not demonstrate how their commercial motor vehicle operations under such an exemption would be as safe or safer than they currently are with the limits in place. The number of trailers that were ordered last month was down compared to a year earlier. ACT Research says preliminary net trailer orders came in at 6,300 units in June, up slightly from May, but about 19% down from last year's total. It continues a trend. Over the second quarter of this year, ACT says there was a 14% contraction in trailer orders. For the first half of 2024, the decline is even greater at 24%. However, ACT's Jennifer McNeely says it's no surprise. In a news release, McNeely said trailer demand is likely to be muted for some time, given the high number of trailer orders over the past few years, not to mention the weak freight market right now. However, ACT Research expects that to start changing soon. As fleets start to make more money over the second half of 2024, they'll be more willing to invest in new equipment, although the impact likely will be muted for the trailer industry, as the spending is likely to go toward the purchase of new power units. Authorities in Texas made a grim discovery behind a convenience store in Houston on Wednesday. It started when someone at the store heard 2 people talking about 2 dead bodies inside a tractor trailer that was parked out back. The person called police, who climbed on top of the trailer to investigate. They found a hole that had been cut out of the roof of the trailer. Inside were 2 bodies. A cause of death has not been determined yet, but heat is being investigated as a possible factor. Houston police told ABC 13 it appears that the 2 people were homeless. They said homeless people cutting holes in trailers and climbing inside has been an ongoing issue in the area. Police in New Bedford, Massachusetts say they've nabbed a suspected car and cargo thief. The 47-year-old suspect is accused of stealing vehicles and tens of thousands of dollars worth of tools and air compressors during a string of commercial vehicle break-ins. In a Facebook post, New Bedford police say the man would break out the windows of the commercial vehicles to get inside and take what he wanted. He faces multiple counts of larceny. Multiple wildfires in Oregon have prompted emergency waivers that extend to professional truck drivers. From the counties of Umatilla and Benton to the counties of Marion and Polk, first responders are busy trying to contain the spread of the fires, which have burned tens of thousands of acres of land. For commercial drivers providing direct assistance, hours of service regulations have been suspended. Motor carriers and drivers must still comply with all size and weight regulations. The California Highway Patrol going to new heights recently to enforce commercial motor vehicle regulations. In a Facebook post, the CHP in Madera County explained how they used aircraft to patrol the State Route 99 corridor on Wednesday. CHP ground units conducted traffic stops based on observations provided by the crew members on the flight. Participation in a new survey targeting carriers will help a good cause. Georgia College, Mississippi State University, and the University of Central Arkansas have launched their 33rd annual study of logistics and transportation trends. It asks questions related to industry perceptions, skill-based hiring practices, strategic trends, and the current regulatory environment. The survey organizers say they'll make a donation to the American Logistics Aid Network for every response they get. The survey, which will remain open through July 24th, takes about 10 minutes. Responses are confidential. We have a link to participate at landlinenow.com. Sheetz has 4 new stores opening next month, and each include truck parking. 2 are in North Carolina, in Asheville and Warsaw, respectively. 1 is in Middleton, Virginia, and another is in Romulus, Michigan. Sheetz currently operates more than 740 stores throughout the Rust Belt and the East Coast. The final numbers from the 45th anniversary Walcott Truckers Jamboree are in. Organizers say an estimated 53,000 people attended the 3-day event at the Iowa 80 truck stop. They got to see a collection of antique trucks, dozens of exhibits, the Super Truck Beauty Contest, listen to live music, sample some savory meat during the pork chop cookout, and more. The 45th anniversary of the Jamboree also coincided with the 60th anniversary of the Iowa 80 truck stop itself. If you missed this year's event, circle July 10th through the 12th of 2025 on your calendar. That's when the next Walcott Truckers Jamboree takes place. And finally, New Yorkers who were looking up on Tuesday might have caught a rare sight. Not a bird or a plane or even Superman, but the thing streaking across Manhattan was a meteor. Social media lit up with speculation. NASA's Meteor Watch put it to rest, writing in a Facebook post that at 34,000 miles per hour, the meteor descended at a steep angle, passing over the Statue of Liberty before disintegrating 29 miles above Midtown Manhattan. That's Lane Line Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. OOIDA is seeking the names and addresses of military personnel serving overseas so we can send them care packages through Truckers for Troops. You can call that information in to Nikki Johnson at our main number, 816-229-5791, or email it to troops@ooida.com. Again, that phone number is 816-229-5791, or email troops@ooida.com. Starting July 26th, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the Top Gun Large Car Shootout. That takes place at the Rantoul National Aviation Center in Rantoul, Illinois. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Registration is now open for OOIDA's Truck to Success seminar, which runs for 3 days starting October 22nd in Blue Springs, Missouri. Truck to Success features trainers who provide a comprehensive course in what it takes to succeed as an owner-operator. The deadline to register to attend in person is October 1st. We'll have a link to more information at ooida.com. Next, Jay Grimes explains how 2 Supreme Court decisions could affect how regulations are made. I'll discuss filing on a broker's bond with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department, and Scott Thompson covers legislation dealing with equipment and liability with state legislative expert Keith Goebel. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman is your leading source for quality remanufactured engines and components. Capital Reman stands ready to serve all OOIDA members to help reduce costly engine repairs or replacement. Visit capitalreman.com today and use code OOIDA10 to save.
ULSD is hurting your engine. Fight back with Howe's Diesel Defender. Get the most powerful cleaning and maximum lubricity to protect and extend the life of your entire system. At a guaranteed increase in fuel economy, and you can't go wrong with Howe's.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget misaccuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Regulatory agencies in the federal government and many people in highly regulated industries are still buzzing about what's been called the Chevron decision made recently by the Supreme Court. And in fact, it's something that could really change how the whole regulatory process works going forward and how regulations could impact you in the future. Welcome back to Landline Now. This is Regulatory Roundup, and I'm Mark Rettig. I'm joined as always by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, thanks for joining me.
Good to be with you.
This is just fascinating to me, and I realize that I'm being wonky here, but I've really found this whole thing just very interesting. I'm wondering if you can just start us briefly by describing the original decision from many, many years ago that created the so-called Chevron doctrine. What essentially was that? Yeah,
so this was a case decided in 1984 that gave federal agencies precedent to interpret ambiguous laws, granting them authority to enact regulation. So it really, when a federal agency rule was being reviewed, it really gave deference to that agency, under the assumption that they had the expertise and the data to make the best decisions. And so it really made it difficult to overturn a lot of cases and a lot of rules that had been put forth by agencies. And over the last few years, going back to this Loper-Bright case, there had been a question on the Chevron doctrine and if that should, be maintained moving forward. And a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that that should not be the case and kind of overturned the Chevron doctrine that had been in place for the last 40 or so years, and certainly has created a whole lot of questions on how the regulatory and rulemaking process is going to look moving forward. And a lot of this stuff we're not going to know for years to come. But yes, the debates are happening, not only within Washington but around the country. I think there are some things we aren't going to know for a while, but kind of in the few weeks that we've had to kind of look at the rulings, the specific words from the justices and the interpretations, I think we kind of have a little bit of a roadmap, I'll say, that we can kind of interpret so far. But definitely is going to, I think, change some things, both on the judicial side, all three branches of government, judicial, legislative, and the executive branch in the years to come.
And I know with a lot of bills that Congress passes, they'll say something very broad like the DOT will establish hours of service for truckers, and then all the detail is left to the agency, and it gives them a lot of leeway. And I guess in this case now, the courts previously said if it's reasonable, then it's okay. Now it's really in the hands of the courts.
Well, and it's no longer automatically deferred back to that agency regulation. So, it certainly, I think, puts a little more power on the judicial review side. It doesn't automatically overturn what the agencies have finalized previously or will finalize moving forward. But yeah, I think it takes away that automatic deference back to the agencies and could put potential rulemakings more in the crosshairs and more open to judicial review moving forward.
Well, and we've had people call here to OOIDA headquarters literally saying, why didn't ELDs just go away? And of course, that's a really good example because that was actually mandated by Congress, wasn't it?
Correct. Yeah, that was a congressional mandate enacted by Congress, signed into law. And, we see a lot of regulations and mandates. So that's the source for those rules coming from Congress. And when you look through the recent Chevron case, those rules are really not under the scope of the Loper case that has recently been decided. So those are kind of going to be, outside potential reopening. So anything that's been enacted through Congress, mandated by Congress, is it can still be challenged and will be reviewed, but it's not going to be under the Chevron doctrine per se.
Well, and we've got some that are coming out or that just have recently come out that weren't mandated specifically.
Sure.
And a good example, I would think, would be the speed limiter regulation we're expecting next year.
Yeah, no doubt. Certainly one that comes to mind. And the speed limiter proposal that has sort of been reopened within the last few years is by no means been enacted by Congress. This is an action that the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, previously the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, was involved. That strictly kind of an agency-backed proposal that if it were eventually finalized and there was a speed limiter mandate, I think could be ripe for further inspection and review by the courts. And a lot of that could depend on how it's written. But because it doesn't have the support from Congress, and quite the opposite as we've seen from legislation that's been introduced here in recent years. That could be one, and certainly there's going to be similar rulemakings that the agency, perhaps, does have the authority to finalize and propose, but their reasoning, their defense for those could be now under more scrutiny and more question under this Chevron doctrine case.
I know one of the concerns is that we could have just a flurry of lawsuits over various regulations. And it made me think of the one agency in government that's sued more often than FMCSA, which is the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And of course, we have these new emission regulations for large trucks that are quite controversial right now. Do we know potentially, were they mandated by Congress specifically? Were they not?
It depends on, the interpretation here. So you've got the Clean Air Act, which does give EPA sort of a broad authority to implement environmental regulations. And certainly EPA, as we've seen throughout a number of trucking-specific emissions regulations, kind of uses that Clean Air Act as their defense. And that's kind of been thrown in question in recent years on some of the cases that have been ruled on by the Supreme Court. So that could be tweaked, and I think is going to be one to watch. You mentioned a flurry of legal activity that's, going to be a result of these recent rulings. And I think that is one thing we do know for sure, that in the short term, we are going to see a lot of challenges. Some might be successful, some might not be, but that's definitely, I think, going to be a result here. You're going to have a lot of legal challenges. Certainly we've seen legal challenges filed already in the EPA's most recently finalized rule, the Phase 3 heavy-duty truck emissions that was announced earlier this year. And based on the Chevron doctrine, the Loper-Bright case that's come out here, that could certainly change the way that EPA Phase 3 rule is reviewed in the courts.
There's another case the Supreme Court decided this year that's also affecting this whole situation. This one is called Corner Post versus Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. And it kind of caught my attention, not only because, of course, it relates to this, but it involves a truck stop.
That's right. And it sort of piggybacks on this kind of regulatory review idea. And previously, anyone harmed by a regulation had 6 years from when the regulation was published to challenge it. This new ruling corner post, throws that out the window, and that you've got 6 years after the first harm is done. So it really expands the window to challenge federal rules and regulations. And this truck stop, that the 6-year window goes back to 2011. I believe the truck stop did not open for business until 2018. So that would have been after the 6-year window. But the company challenged a debit card fee regulation in 2021 that they thought that it was harming the business. And they argued that the 6-year clock started when it was first harmed by the rule, not when it wasn't originally published. So you're going to have a longer window now to challenge potential federal regulations. And of course, you've got the Loper-Bright case, which could, upend a lot of previously finalized rules, but also could upend a lot of final rules in the future.
Well, and it made me think, too, that, and we're speaking hypothetically,
Yep.
Obviously neither of us is an attorney, but hypothetically, a brand new motor carrier, one that opens, say, today, could challenge rules that have been enforced for some time, put out by FMCSA, as long as they're not mandated by Congress, I guess.
Yeah, that's going to be, I think, one avenue here. And, it could also, 6, 8, 10 years down the future, even a motor carrier that's, starting business today, maybe they're not harmed by a rule until a future date. And, now they can potentially challenge no matter if that 6-year window has expired, as was the case for a little over since going back to 2011. So definitely some game changers from the Supreme Court here that are I think are going to have a long-standing and still unknown impact on not only trucking regulations but a whole host of other industries as well, and certainly going to impact the way that legislation is written, how these agencies go about writing future rulemaking as well, and certainly the judicial branch is going to have their say going forward as well.
Some of the upsides to this from truckers' point of view seem obvious to me. We could see some onerous regulations that really don't help safety go away. But I'm curious, Jay, if you think there are any downsides to this from truckers' point of view. I mean, is there anything that could come out of this that maybe wouldn't be so good?
Certainly you could envision more, narrow laws written by Congress that, as we saw Congress write the ELD mandate, they could come up with, similar rules. And certainly we've seen legislation introduced that would not be positive for truckers. The Stop Underrides Act comes to mind, for instance, which would mandate side and front underride equipment on basically every, commercial vehicle that's out there. So there's a whole host of other examples. So now that this could impact how Congress operates as well, we're going to, do our best to make sure that, Congress, does keep an open mind on potential safety mandates and that they're making practical and common sense legislation that isn't going to have some of these onerous, burdensome costs on small trucking businesses. And that's always going to be a fight that we're prioritizing at OOIDA. But so much to work through in response to these recent Supreme Court decisions. I don't think anyone has a great idea of how they're going to work, and it's going to be a while before we see judges and courts kind of make some rulings that could set some new precedents moving forward, and those impacts on the rulemaking and regulatory process. But going to be interesting to see. I think it does have more overall positive benefits at overturning some harmful regulations that are on the books and potential regulations that might be harmful that are in the works right now over at FMCSA and DOT, and certainly EPA and other agencies too.
Okay, well, we've run out of time, Jay, and I've got so many other questions I want to ask you.
I know.
We'll hold on to them for a future date. In the meanwhile, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've been talking with OOIDA's Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Every year, 28 million people are trafficked globally. The Your Roads Their Freedom campaign seeks to raise awareness in the transport industry. Truck and bus drivers, be vigilant on the roads. If you see something suspicious, text 233-733 or be free.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide. Less weight, more freight. Truckdown.com.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
Landline Now. Welcome back. Problems with bad brokers have been around for many, many years in the trucking industry. However, it's always good to not only look at what new problems have cropped up and how to solve them, but also to remind ourselves of some of the long-running problems that are still with us. Here to discuss some of those issues and how to deal with them are Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Always good to be here, Mark.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Let's dive right into this. And the big topic that we've been talking about before we went on the air here is the process of filing against a broker bond. And I kind of want to start here. What are the circumstances in which you would want to file against a bond? I mean, when does this come up?
Well, I mean, when you haul a load for a broker, obviously you do the best you can and you assume or hope that you've done your background checks and that everything's legit. But, you extend a broker a certain amount of credit when you haul that load. And you want to be paid for that. So if for whatever reason the broker doesn't pay you, now there are situations, if there's a claim on a load, the load doesn't get delivered for some reason, all right, some of that falls back on the carrier. But assuming that all things are good, you delivered, got a clean bill of lading, and then you expect to get paid. So if you don't get paid, that's when you go to filing on the bond. I always recommend contact the broker, try to work it out first, figure it out, what's going on. There may be some technical issues, maybe somebody misplaced it or put a wrong PO number in. Let's work out those issues first. But if all that's all being equal and you have to file on the bond, then there are some other criteria that comes into that. So you got to look at, was it an interstate load? Because intra-state loads are not subject to the bond requirements. What was the commodity? Because if it was chicken or, say poultry, fish, produce, those are not subject to the bond requirement. Those are non-regulated products. So if it's a regulated commodity and you've got your clean bill of lading and you've delivered on time, everything's went well, and the broker is just saying, screw you, I'm not paying, or not answering their phone, or all kinds of issues like this, that's when you would look at filing on the bond. So then that's when you would start that process.
So do you need to find the bonding company? Is that even part of the process here?
It is, and that's the beginning of it. Once you have determined you're not getting paid, or you've been given the runaround, the check's in the mail for a month. It can't be in the mail for a month, right? I mean, The post office is slow, but they're not that slow. Mm-hmm. So, once you've been given the runaround and you're pretty determined that it's not coming, so that's when you would file on the bond. In order to do that, your first step is to go to the FMCSA's website and go to the L&I section.
L&I meaning
license and insurance. And when you access, and I always tell people, go in through the safer site. That's the best way to go in. Go in through the safer site, which most folks are familiar with. Enter the MC number. It will bring up the broker's name. At that point, you click on the L&I section, and it will take you to the registration information for the broker. Under there, you can hit the HTML button, and that will bring up the broker's more in-depth information as far as the broker, their contact information, and then the the insurance tab will bring up their bonding company. Then you get that bonding company information. Most of the time, there is a phone number associated with that you can call. I see more and more nowadays, and Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong here, see more and more where it's just you've got to research the insurance company because they want to do an online claim.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, they don't even want to talk to you anymore. They just want you to do an online claim.
Or it's all through email.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's...
Well, that's going to, be a problem for some of the old timers that don't have that kind of technology. I think that's one of the things that's probably important is to realize that at some point you're going to have that technology.
Yeah, if you're not up on that technology, really you're getting left behind because so much has went to all digital and very little human contact. I think that's beneficial for these big companies, to not have to have that, but for the small mom and pop business or one truck operation. It's difficult to enter an email and stuff like this when you need to be rolling down the road, so. But anyway, back to the filing on the bond. So you look up the bonding company through the FMCSA LNI site. You get the bonding company. You contact them either through an email or a phone, whichever option they offer there. Once you file on the bond, well, then they will ask you for some information. They'll want some proof, the bill of lading, a copy of your rate con, possibly a copy of the contract from the broker, some other information to verify because they will get with the broker and verify the information. Now, a lot of the times, especially now, the broker's a fraud. There's not a broker and not a real broker involved, nobody to actually contact. So if that's the case, then they take your filing and 60 days, they have, 35 days, the bond will cancel. If the bonding company's not been able to get a hold of the broker, then 35 days, the bond will cancel and they will have to put out a 60-day notice to anybody to file on that bond. Once that 60 days is up, then there's another waiting period in order for which you'll get paid. They've got to give everybody 60 days to file on it. Now, if you're if there's $1 million worth of haul rates out there on the highway that are not paid, and there's a $75,000 bond, and it pays out on a pro rata basis, you can imagine people are not going to get their full dollar for dollar amount.
Yeah, you're going to get paid pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
Well, that $4,000 load might be $300 when it's all said and done.
Yeah, or less.
Or less.
Sure.
And it's really sad, because here 10 years ago or so, they raised the bond rate from $10,000, which it had been at for ever. Yeah. To $75,000, which OIDA pushed for a lot more than that. We knew that was still a low round. But it got raised to $75,000 and some in the industry said, well, that'll take care of it. No, it does not take care of it. Ask some of these truckers that have hauled these loads that have got paid a couple of $100s on a several $1,000 load where they put in, $1,000 worth of just fuel and they get a couple $100 back, maybe. But it's not adequate. But that is the process that's in place.
Well, let's talk about that case that you just raised there, that pennies on the dollar case where you're just getting a little bit. Obviously, you want to get the rest of that money. Do you have options? For example, could you go to small claims court?
You could. You can always take the broker to court. Now keep in mind, if it was a legitimate broker that filed for bankruptcy, they get some protections there. So, you want to get with possibly an attorney and see what your options are. But many times it's not a legitimate broker. It's one of these scammers that, they paid their, $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month for that bond to be in place, and then they bailed. And who do you go after then? You report that stuff to the AIG, to the FMCSA, to the anybody you can report it to, but nothing really happens. There's nobody really solving those cases.
Well, and some of these people are literally overseas, so how do you litigate something like that?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. And that is a growing problem there, especially with the scammers is, we're having a lot of East European and I think even some Mideast countries are where these people are located. And they're just, because you can do this online now, there is no difference based on where you are.
No, I mean, at one time, before the internet as it is now,
when we were using those stone tablets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you had to be somewhat close, or somewhat relatively close. I remember there was a big thing out of Southern California that nobody wanted to book loads with the brokers there because they was all scams, or so they said. But now it's not localized. There's no one area, one IP address or anything else. It's everywhere. And the way the FMCSA has allowed the system to be, the way the FMCSA has it structured, let's just say, they have made it very easy for scammers to enter, to screw people over, and to disappear and pop up someplace else under a totally new name. I mean, motor carriers have to have a physical address. Brokers don't have to have a physical address. I mean, that's one of the ways that I see that they could curtail a lot of that stuff right there. Do a compliance review on a broker. When have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
Motor carriers, you'll get a compliance review, early on in having your authority. Brokers, there is no compliance review. There's no,
there's no auditing system in place at all.
Yeah. No. And this goes back to a problem with FMCSA overall because Federal Railroad Administration regulates railroads, but it's the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't, in their eyes, have something to do with safety, they think they can just blow it off.
Yeah, and they do. And I got to say, I think it's pretty easy to equate the fact that a motor carrier, a small one-truck operation that gets ripped off on a few loads and loses some money and can't buy tires and brakes, that's a safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
Straight out, that's a safety issue because, that individual's still trying to stay in business and not lose his ass.
Well, what is their goal? Their goal is to earn money to do things like feed their kids, pay the mortgage, pay the electric bill.
Can you imagine these people thinking that?
I know. It's terrible.
Well, and unfortunately, it's more so, they harp on safety, and a lot of times it's more so that they figure that this is a business transaction between business to business relationship, right? And so it's not deemed as a safety issue. And so unfortunately, that's where I see, or where we see, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but that's where it kind of falls short, as far as that goes, the actual, follow through or follow up in a complaint. Like when you complain on the NCCDB, things of that nature in issues like this, you know what I mean? So, there's certain contingencies that are in place, but they're not always followed up on.
And we should spell out for folks, you mentioned the NCCDB, the National Consumer Complaint Database. And I did notice, I went on there recently, and they have, for a while, there was no place to complain about a broker. They have actually added a section where you can file a complaint about a broker now.
Yeah, but it's not the easiest to navigate. I wouldn't say it's the most trucker friendly, right?
No.
If you want to use that. But yeah, that is something that you can actively utilize, and hopefully you follow up on, because you do get a complaint number, but I rarely get calls and have success stories that come out of that.
And let me say, though, while that is true, what Aaron says, 100% true, go there and make those complaints, because the first thing the FMCSA says when we go to them and we say, hey, we're hearing this, they said, well, we're not getting complaints about that. Even if there's no resolve through that site, go there and make those complaints. That is important that they see those.
Okay. Well, guys, we've run out of time here. One thing, Tom, that I did want to mention is you sent me a document that we are going to post on our website, landlinenow.com, and it basically spells out this process for filing on a bond.
It does. It makes it real easy. It's got pics with it. For those of us that are not the most tech savvy, it'll definitely walk you through that. And of course, if you have issues with that or problems, or still it's over your tech level, give us a call. Give the compliance department a call. We'll help you out.
Okay, and that number is 816-229-5791. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Thank you as always.
Always, Mark.
Landline Now will be back in a moment.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Hey, we're back on the home stretch of our show today, wrapping things up with Keith Goebel of Landline Magazine, riding shotgun, which means it's time for our weekly state legislative update. Today, we're talking commercial vehicle liability changes in Louisiana and GPS systems in New York State. Keith, good to see you.
Scott, good to see you. How you doing?
Doing all right here. We've got a lot of ground to cover. Let's begin in Louisiana with a new law, right, that deals with liability coverage and operational equipment. Walk us through exactly what this law is, what it does, and what it means for Louisiana truckers.
Yeah, optional equipment. Concerned there in Louisiana that the optional equipment, statute needed to be revised just to clarify whether there is responsibility or not to have optional equipment on a commercial vehicle that up to this point, it was not required by state law and not required by federal law. So they were just trying to essentially clarify there in Louisiana law that there is no duty for a commercial driver to have optional equipment, again, that is not required by law. Now, specifically, what kind of optional equipment are we talking about? Nice, enhanced features that more and more vehicles have these days, but they're not on all vehicles. Stuff like lighted side mirrors that give you notification maybe that somebody's coming into your blind spot. Automatic braking systems, stuff like that. Again, nice features, not required by law to have those features. Not with this new law wanting to really just address that there is no liability for a truck driver who just because they don't have these added, nice luxury features.
And this law takes effect on August 1st. I guess this all begs the question that, I guess this was a problem or was becoming a problem there in Louisiana because lawmakers obviously saw the problem there and addressed it. But how big a problem is it, I guess, there in the state?
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, anytime you've got lawmakers who get on board and recognize that, it does make, it's a common sense bill. There weren't any numbers that I had seen attached to, lawsuits that were coming up, but there was a notice that there had been a significant increase in lawsuits that were coming up and felt that, one thing that they could do was they could address this particular issue again on optional equipment and try to, tamp that down, make it a little bit more reasonable, which they kind of like they had not a loophole, but it was just something that was not addressed in state law that fortunately, as of August 1st, they will address it.
So this one was signed into law by the governor. Another that would have added some towing protections for truck drivers was not. Reading your article on landline.media, quite a bit of back and forth on this issue there, it looks like.
Yeah, again, Louisiana law, they provide a weight exemption on an initial tow if you've got a disabled, large truck on that initial tow in order to get it to the nearest available repair facility. What the legislation was addressing was if when it's sent to that initial location, say they don't have the parts, or there isn't someone available to work on it in a timely manner, let's say. So the owner needs to have it moved to a second location. What the legislation wanted to do was provide a weight exemption for that secondary or that second tow. So a lot of common sense to making that revision. I mean, there were those in the State House, lawmakers, who said, we need to do something for truckers that get into that situation. It's not a typical situation, but it does occur in those types of situations to help out the truck owner, that they should have that second tow exception. In the end, got stalled in a committee. There was concern by the state DOT that they didn't want state law to supersede what the rules for federal highways are. Was concerned that it could affect federal dollars coming to the state if they were to do this. Yeah, in the end, they weren't able to work out those concerns. So although it passed unanimously in the House, it stalled out there in the Senate Transportation Committee.
Maybe next time around, we'll see what happens there. Let's shift over to New York State. You're tracking a bill there that seeks to cut down on bridge and tunnel strikes, and it's gaining some steam there. And GPS systems factor into the conversation here in a big way, it appears. Yeah, very safe to say this was widely supported when it was approved by the Assembly. Only one person voting against it in New York, so a bipartisan support for this. Again, looking to require the navigation systems that use GPS, that they show the legal clearance height of bridges, tunnels, and underpasses along a proposed route. So you enter in your route, and they're wanting these GPS to provide that information so that somebody can get a heads up that there might be problematic if they go that route. But yeah, I know folks are familiar. I mean, we hear about it from time to time across the country. Bridge strikes, New York. The belief there, and why this bill has really gotten to this point is that they have current GPS systems are ineffective, and wanting to put in a requirement to obviously reduce the incidents that they're experiencing there. Yeah, and I think the key with this one, too, is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the burden here would be on GPS manufacturers and service providers, right? Not truck drivers in situations, of course, where the GPS is guiding one of these people into a bridge where they shouldn't be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just providing more information. So, yeah, I mean, the onus would be on those providing, the GPS and, again, those companies. And, overall, I would say there really isn't any opposition to this that has been noted. Again, going back to the fact that it's halfway through the State House there. Now, they're essentially running out of time there in the state of New York to get this through this year, even though it got very favorable support there in the Assembly. Most likely it's going to come back in 2025, but hopefully it'll be a little bit more of an expedited process next year. But again, yeah, folks recognizing there at the State House that the way it's currently done, with the navigation, is not it's not taking care of the situation. And obviously truck drivers, bridge heights, it's kind of a big deal.
It is a big deal, and a bad day, obviously, for the driver when you hit a bridge, a bad day for sure. But also, it's one of these things that is very costly for the taxpayers, right? When something like this happens, you've got to inspect the bridge, you got to fix it, and all these things. So I know that's part of the conversation here too. It's not just an inconvenience, obviously, which it is for sure, but it's very costly for states like New York to repair all these things. And I think there were hundreds, last year, right?
Yeah, I mean, not only in the immediate aftermath of an incident, but in the days, maybe weeks following getting that situation taken care of. As the bill sponsor pointed out there in the Assembly, having warning signs up it's obviously it's not enough at putting alerts where they're right there for the driver to see that they may be along a route that could be problematic if they continue. It definitely a needed revision to these navigation systems, and we'll see if New York can really take the lead on this.
We will tune in, or I guess check out landline.media, the website there. Keith will keep all of us updated on what's happening in New York and other states throughout the country. Keith, we appreciate it as always.
No, thanks for having me.
That's our show for today. We appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, drive safe out there.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.